Next, we're starting our session in Managing Water in a Changing Climate. I'm going to introduce our moderator, Jessica Vanstone, with a brief bio. Jessica is a senior research officer within the Adaptation and Resilience Analysis Unit, Climate Resilient Branch within the Ministry of Environment. She's earned a Bachelor of Science degree in both biology and geography and a Master of Science in geography from the University of Regina. She specializes in climatology, hydrology, dendrochronology, climate extremes, and adaptation to a changing climate. For over 18 years, Jessica has studied and worked within the fields of tree ring science, hydrology, water resource and management, environment, and climate change. She currently works as a member and dedicated to her team to support preparedness and resilience of Saskatchewan and its people to climatic, economic, and policy effects of a changing climate. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage. Jessica.
Thank you. I'm shorter. Thank you, Liz. So yes, I'm Jessica Vanstone, and I am coming from the government of Saskatchewan within the Ministry of Environment. I'm not going to say much because we have a very tight session and I want there to be time for questions. So if we don't get to questions, just keep in mind that all of our speakers will be here for the rest of the afternoon and you have a chance to chat with them after. So we have 5 speakers that will be sharing information to help us learn more about the pressing issues of water management, flooding, and drought within the context of our home here in the Prairie region. I've shared a passion for these topics throughout my career, both academically and professionally, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about the ways that we can further our practical preparedness and increase our resilience to the impacts of events like floods and droughts, which can threaten the water availability and quality for communities, agriculture, and ecosystems. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first set of speakers, Scott Millar and Michael Martineau. Scott currently serves as the Executive Director for the North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance. He is a collaborative engagement expert with experience in natural resource management, aquatic biology, and regulatory design. Trained as an aquatic biologist, Scott has worked across Canada and the United States on projects ranging from multi-year threatened white sturgeon inventories to multi-stakeholder consensus water management projects. He's passionate about creating truly collaborative and inclusive conversations that can transform decision-making, build trust, and create meaningful solutions for complex problems. In Michael's current role as the emergency management lead for the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations, Michael remains deeply committed to serving Indigenous communities. He emphasizes capacity development, collaboration, inclusivity, and respect for traditional Indigenous knowledge. Michael holds a master's degree in disaster and emergency management, and he is a certified firefighter, a hazardous materials operator, and a former ACP certified primary care paramedic with a background in emergency support services. Michael uses his experience in emergency management to empower Indigenous communities and effectively address the challenges posed by emergencies and disasters in First Nations. Together, Scott and Michael will be speaking to us about key insights and lessons learned from the development of a First Nations drought resiliency needs assessment. So please welcome Scott and Michael.
Hey, hello, everyone. There we go. There we go. This isn't television. I can hear you. We can hear you. So feel free to call out things and say nice things, out loud. It's really a privilege to be here today to speak to the Drought Needs Assessment Project and give some insights into the work that has happened so far. And it's the beginning of work that will hopefully be running for a few years now. The watershed of the Saskatchewan River, the North Saskatchewan River, is mostly in Treaty 6 territory, but there is some Treaty 8 along the mountains. The watershed is also home to the Métis Nation, as well as one of the largest populations of Inuit south of the 60th parallel. And when I refer to the watershed, I'm thinking of the Alberta portion. Of course, the watershed extends beyond those boundaries, but for the North Saskatchewan, that's what we focus on. really a short, concise presentation today, only 68 slides. Really broken into a couple of parts. Michael's going to speak to the project and sort of what led to the project and what we've learned a little bit along the way. I'll be touching on where the project is going to go and some of the bigger lessons we've learned that are going to inform sort of next steps. So.
Thank you. Sorry, I have some keywords that I gotta hit here. So just a quick introduction on our organizations. I'm with the Confederacy of Treaty 6. We act as a united voice for all 16 or for 16 First Nations in the Treaty 6 Alberta side. With our focus is on protection of treaty and inherent rights in all of our member nations. Within our territory over the past few years, there's been a growing priority for our chiefs has been climate readiness and emergency management. Yesterday was one of the speakers talked about the inherent or the intersectionality of social issues and the climate crisis, and we're really living it, and we're seeing it day to day. The NSWA is a nonprofit dedicated to the conservation, protection, and sustainable management of the North Saskatchewan, with a focus on the health of the watershed and enhancing water stewardship in all watersheds. And a little bit of background on this project. It was really serendipitous when the timing happened with this. When Scott and the North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance had the idea for this project and reached out, one of our nations had just come out of a water crisis where their wells dried up. They had no water. They actually had to open up an evacuation site on the nation to bring in people just to give them like a cooling center and then also to bring water out to the community. And this was in 2023. So this happened, he reached out right after that. And so it was already something that was on our plate that we're already facing on the day-to-day. Okay, so through their work, the NSWA identified a gap in current mechanisms available to First Nations. The current focus is very heavily geared towards municipalities, which is not a bad thing, but there is that gap. And in this project, we were looking to fill what we call like an unknown unknown. Like we didn't even know what we need to address just yet. And that's what First Nations need from like what they say that they need directly from them. As such, the project looked to enhance First Nations' abilities to adapt to climate conditions. And the goal was to come up with a tangible outcome, something that we could give directly to the nations that they can use and utilize in their communities, like the day that it's complete. It's not something that yes, we want to see progress over years and years, but we want to be able to give them something immediately and be like, here's something you can use today. So phase one of the project has been a needs assessment, and we're going directly to the 16 nations that we work with to gather insights and direction. And we're facilitating collaboration and drought planning. One of the best things that we've had out of these tables is the chance for them to sit across, because they don't even talk with lots of times in our territory. We're pretty vast. It goes from one end of the province to the other. Those near the mountains don't talk to those out east by the border with Saskatchewan very often. They don't have the opportunity to a lot. And so this was a chance for them to talk specifically on this topic. So the needs identified we kind of lumped them into a few different themes. Knowledge, education, and capacity building with an emphasis on traditional knowledge and practice, where really emphasized there was a feeling across the board in all of our nations that they had a lot of knowledge that was lived with daily practice, but that's kind of gone by the wayside, and there's a desire to bring that back, as well as workforce development. Other themes were intelligence and data gathering with increased monitoring and reporting and access to technology, governance and autonomy with emphasis on decision-making autonomy on the nations, as well as infrastructure and resource management and financial sustainability. And a lot of these themes and a lot of these topics needs that were identified do align with the AWC priorities. That's the Alberta Water Council. Then I'll hand it back to Scott now.
So as Michael pointed out, a lot of work has been happening in this space. And you might think that with that kind of a foundation, that we would be able to move quickly into identifying what First Nations in the Treaty 6 territory would need. But the problem, and it's not a problem, the reality is we as a not-for-profit did not have a working relationship with those communities. The Confederacy clearly does, but not necessarily in this topic. And we had not brought together the people who were familiar with water from the various communities in one room before. So this very first step is quite small, it's quite measured. It's about starting to build that trust in us as an organization, us working with the Confederacy. We're all figuring out how to navigate all of these pieces. So this very first step is quite small and deliberate on purpose. Otherwise, we could have just taken what the Alberta Water Council did and just change a few words and call it done. And nobody would have, there wouldn't be one nation that would accept that information. So before I get into the sort of the lessons we learned through this project so far, we're already thinking about what's coming next. So we've got some needs identified. And by the way, this vision of where it's going to go came from the workshops. It wasn't something we came to the table with a clear idea of where we wanted to go. We had I'd say we had a vague notion of a direction, but it was the people in the room who said, well, we need to start with ceremony. We need to start with a pipe ceremony. We need to bring the nations together and start off the sort of the bigger part of this project in a very clear way. And then the second part that came of this next steps is about looking at it from how do we drive from a paper exercise, a workshop exercise to the ground as soon as possible so that there's benefit, as Michael mentioned, for people on the ground in community. All right. So I'll skip on to the lessons piece. I'm a biologist by training. I come at things from a Western perspective. But what we heard in the room was that water is not a thing. It's not a resource. It is a relation, the same as any other person in that room. And for me, I mean, I right away start trying to figure out how I can understand that and how I could capture that for the report. The key is not necessarily about me understanding. The key is about including the people who do understand in those conversations. And that's what we've been trying to do all along. That way, this idea that water is a relation, that it is a connection, is built into the conversation because the people who know about that are there with you. I mean, there's another section to this about relations, which is around the fact that some relations are better than others. We mistakenly assumed that people knew we were a not-for-profit, two not-for-profits. But that's not how nations started off. They assumed water, your government, you're the enemy, we're not talking to you. And then they went, you're not? Oh, okay. And they started talking and sharing. And even then, there were some communities that still were reserved and kept their feedback for the private conversation in the hallway at the end of the workshop. So you have to be prepared for all of those sort of avenues. This is the other big learning I would say is that we think about drought as this discrete thing. We have to be prepared for drought, but for First Nations, it's not about drought. Drought is just a little blip on the radar. It's about water security first and foremost. It's about nations that have 700 groundwater wells and they can't maintain them. And so they don't have the ability to have secure water. And then as we get into a little bit more logistics, you're now talking about, as Michael mentioned, bringing together, I think we had 12 to 14 nations, depending on the day, and just allowing them to talk to one another because they don't talk to one another when it comes to water. And about providing capacity for those people to be in the room. Most nations have maybe a couple hundred people, maybe as many as 1,000 people. They can't afford to take the day to come to your workshop. So you need to give them I mean, it's no different. I was paid to be there, but they're not. So you need to cover those types of things. There's many people here in the room who probably already understand that, but it's worth reiterating that when we're coming at things from a Western organizational perspective, we forget how limited a small community can be. And with that, that was our 100-mile-an-hour overview of the project. We're looking now to do this phase 2, as I mentioned. So we're just starting to envision how we might apply for funding and that sort of thing. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation. I work in the area of climate data, and so we're often looking at the future, 30 years, 60 years, 90 years in the future. And I just really appreciate what you were saying about having tools that are really immediately beneficial. And I just wonder if you could speak a bit to that tension and that pressure between, the immediate needs, what we need to do on the ground now versus planning ahead many, many years into the future.
Yeah, so the immediate needs, I'm coming from an emergency management perspective. So everything that I am looking at and dealing with it's an emergency right now. And we are, I think nations are a good, if you want to see like a litmus test for how or what impacts communities will face in the future, look to nations near you now, because they're living through the climate crisis currently, whether it's like impacts from industry with pollution on nations where the water they used to be able to drink is now like securing source water. They can't drink that water now, or the effects of the drought are so significant so quickly that their wells are dry. We're facing it right now. So there is the hope that we can plan for the future, but right now there is a lot of nations that treat it as like it's here now. What can I do today? Sorry, what was your question? Was how do we? Yeah, I think the idea is I read this paper before that was talking about how Indigenous people already live in a post-apocalyptic world. Their way of life was our way of life has been completely decimated, and we're living in the impacts of that. And so there is the tension. There is no really tension because they're in it right now. They're already redlining, and we're here today, and we're going to keep fighting this. And we're going to keep going 30 years from now. I think there's a really big difference in the culture between First Nations and the outside world in that there's an emphasis on maintaining the community and the importance of the community that I don't know if it comes from like old school treaty protectors that still teach that right from day one in the communities. I didn't grow up on my reserve. I grew up in the city. So that's why I was switching between us, them, like that. I didn't grow up around old school treaty protectors, but there is the idea that's taught in every child that grows up on a reserve that you work for your community, you come back to your community. Like, yeah, you can go travel like they talked about. But when you come back home, because you have a responsibility to your community. And I think that's something that isn't shared out as much. And unless you spend a lot of time with First Nations, you don't really feel that. So that tension is always there, but there's also the resiliency is instilled right from a child. Like, we went through something that was really horrible with residential schools, and with colonization, and we still came back and we're still here. They threw their best at us, like to not to be adversarial, but like they threw their best at us and we're still here. So we're still going to be here later. This is a storm that we can weather. And so there is a lot of desire and drive, and there is like we can do this attitude in First Nations. And so it's just kind of opening it up and getting them to actually share that, because a lot of them will be quite closed off.
All right. So next up, we have Bridget Andrews, who is the Executive Director for the Saskatchewan Association of Watersheds, or SAW, and is also a professional agrologist. She's been working in the area of watershed stewardship for the past 17 years. She has worked extensively in the agricultural stewardship areas, and in the past 5 years has expanded SAW's portfolio into the areas of climate variability and extremes, drought preparedness for rural communities, rural water testing, ecosystem health for species at risk, and aquatic invasive species monitoring, just to name a few. SAW's vision is being a key provider of Saskatchewan's watershed stewardship. Today, Bridget will be speaking to us about the importance of connecting program delivery to community engagement and knowledge transfer. So please welcome Bridget.
You. Well, thanks everyone. Right after lunch. So don't everyone go to sleep here. I just wanted to thank ClimateWest for having our organization present today, and congratulations on a successful event. I appreciate the introduction, Jessica. That's great. One thing I wanted to add, though, that I am a fourth generation rancher. My family runs and operates a large cattle operation southwest of Moose Jaw. So that's a little bit there. But the reason I wanted to tell you that is because we farm with my in-laws. And so I've heard pretty much every climate slang regards to climate change and whether it exists or whether it doesn't exist. I've pretty much heard it all. So sometimes I get classified as the tree hugger, you might say, and I raise my eyebrow, but I think it's nice to be able to link production and environment and figure out where the gaps are. So I'm going to talk today. Oh, I guess I should move my slide ahead here. There we go. Oh, how can I go back? We won't go back. We're going forward again. Okay, how do we go back here? There we go. Okay, so I'm going to talk about SAW, our organization. I'm also going to talk about the projects and programs that we are implementing right now. And then from there, I'm going to talk about community engagement and how do we link those and what the challenges have been. So I think my most important slide is the last one of the day, but it's going to probably be a few before we get there. All right, so who is SAW? Well, we're a nonprofit organization. Our head office is located in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. We have staff, around 25 staff. Some work remotely, some work out of our head office. We represent all 29 watersheds in Saskatchewan, and we have 5 district advisory committees. And from those district advisories, you can see the districts. I gotta tall here. See the districts outlined on the screen. Out of those, our board representation comes out of those districts. Right now, the Northwest, Northeast, Southeast, and Southwest districts have representation on our board. We are in the process of opening up the North District. So this was a realignment that happened in 2020, just due to some changes in funding and how we operated. So we've seen a lot of change in the last 3 to 4 years. Our staff, in terms of who we hire or who works for us, we have agrologists, we have engineers, we have geologists, we've got GIS people, hydrologists, a very variety of people that work for us on various amounts of projects. Just to move ahead, so in terms of our vision, sustainable watersheds to support life and health, we have 4 values: partnerships. I think we talked about partnerships for the past 2 days, how important they are. We also look at service excellence. So providing service to our client, to our customer, communities, whether they're public, whether like communities, all different kinds, government, our funder, and then stakeholder engagement. So we have to be able to hear those voices and be listeners to those communities, and that our stakeholders have a voice, and we're nonpartisan. So those are the values that we as a board have put together. And then from 2024 to 2026, we're looking at deliverables of addressing water quality concerns, climate variability and adaptation, watershed stewardship from an agriculture stewardship perspective, and lake community stewardship. So what I'm going to talk about first is the climate resiliency programming we have. Before we get started, though, I do want to make note of our Director of Water Resources, Dr. Samantha Kerr. She leads the climate resiliency programming and water resources for SAW, and she's here today, over to my left, and she's on the ClimateWest committee. You can stand up if you want. She didn't know I was going to do that to her, eh? All right, so we've got 4 major programs that we're working on right now. The first being a 3-year project. We're entering year 3 in partnership with Environment and Climate Change Canada. We've got climate change adaptation plans we've developed for the Northeast, Northwest, and also the Southeast districts. The 4 themes involved in the planning of these was infrastructure, human health, cultural resources, and natural systems. We did this through community engagement. And you know, you put these workshops out and you think, is anyone actually going to come? And they do. We probably had between 30 and 50 people that came from various professions and what they do. What we did is collected the feedback on the themes at the grassroots regional level. And from that information, we developed impact strategies and actions at the regional level. So from impacts, I'm talking about water quality, water quantity, ecosystems, agriculture impacts, traditional impacts, infrastructure, recreation, and tourism. So these are community-led plans. These are not SAW-led plans. These are things we've pulled from the communities at the regional level and put onto paper. Now, you're probably gonna say, well, this is what they look like actually. But what we want to do now is prioritize those actions and then figure out how we find funding for those actions for those communities. So this is kind of the bottom level. We contracted Prairie Adaptation Research Collaborative to do the climate projections for each district. So we did that, Park did that for us. So we had some data to bring to those communities. And then from there, you'll notice there's 3 links on my screen where we produce 3 climate resilience videos. You can go to our website, www.saskwatersheds.ca. They're on there, and we've got 2 to produce in this year. So there's lots going on with this project. It's been an exciting project, but it's also been really rewarding and challenging all at the same time. Next. So drought preparedness planning. So we've just come out of doing 3 drought plans for the town of Cabri, town of Hudson Bay, and hamlet of Vanguard. So these are small communities doing drought preparedness planning. One thing I want to note though, all the communities are different. So town of Cabri, they're worried about pumping out of the South Saskatchewan River, that they can't get the water out of the river to their community. So we've got some of that happening. We've got reservoir levels. This kind of stuff is what they're bringing to the table, and how do they conserve their water? These communities, these plans are not 20-page documents. These plans are 3 to 5 pages total. They do not want a 20-page report. They want it direct, decisive, so that when they hit those emergencies, that they can actually find what they need and move forward. It's not something that's a living document and keeps working. And you think the communities will all be similar, but they're all different and have totally unique challenges facing them. We've got a eco shelter belt project running in the North Saskatchewan River. Catherine, who we just saw before lunch, is a partner in this project with us. So we 10 days ago, we sent our staff up to plant shelter belts. So it was really good over by Hafford. So we've done some of that. We've got some livestock offsite watering systems that are going in. I think there's 2 left, I think, to go in. And then we're in year 2 of the project, and we'll be doing a floating treatment wetland up probably in the North Battleford area. So that's where these have started ongoing. So there's a lot of heavy lifting, and I don't know if you've driven across, you've seen lots of bush pushed. Lots of it. When we started this, I'm like, are we going to get anybody to want to build a shelter belt? They want to push them down. And we've had really good uptake on this project. So stewardship on the shore. This is a new initiative. It started last fall. We're just in the middle of putting a lake stewardship BMP strategy for people that use the lake, live at the lake. So we'll be actually promoting that strategy. It'll come out this fall. We've got some fact sheets. Those will go on our website. And we've got actually a workshop in Meota tomorrow. So Sam's got a few miles to make yet this week. But this has been really good. We've had really good engagement at the lakefront piece. It's been good. And you saw floating treatment wetlands this morning. We actually put one in Kensington Pond with the City of Saskatoon and help of Meewasin. So we've got one there, but there'll be one going at Hobson Pond at City of Yorkton, and we'll be working with the City of Regina on 2 other ones. So we've got those working. I'm not sure if you've seen them, but if you haven't, if you go to our website where the video is, 2 minutes, I gotta hustle. We got go to the website where the videos are, and it'll show you all about the floating treatment wetland project from start to finish. We used youth groups to plant the plants. And they had just an awesome time doing that. Our biggest program right now is the agriculture stewardship programming. Saskatchewan, there's 56 million arable acres, agriculture acres in here with livestock and crop production. Obviously, it's a large economic driver. And it has large impact on the environment, so we need to be able to work together. The biggest program is the Prairie Watersheds Climate Program. We're just wrapping it up June 30th this year. It's funded through AAFC, through the OFCAF or On-Farm Climate Action Fund, in joint partnership with the Manitoba Association of Watersheds. So this is actually an interprovincial program we ran in 2 provinces. And it's to help producers implement BMPs, beneficial management practices, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase carbon sequestration on their land. So the new program, we started April 1st of this year. It's called SWEEP. It isn't in partnership with Manitoba. We just divided just because we wanted to give more funding to producers in 2 provinces. So it began April 1st. So we're actually winding down Prairie Watersheds Climate Program, and we're introducing SWEEP, but they run parallel to each other. Just with that, improving nitrogen management with producers. So for our nitrogen management, right place, right time, right source, right amount, slow release fertilizers, zero-till modifications, use of nitrogen inhibitors, legumes in rotation, looking at the adoption of cover cropping. We heard about that before lunch, and then the adoption of rotational grazing. So these are the 3 BMPs, and under there's subsections of those. And just to give you some stats on this, under the Prairie Watersheds Climate Program, we had 3,840 applications over the 3 years. We started the late of 2022, 1,828 producers for $28.8 million went into agriculture BMPs. So that's a lot of stuff in phase 1 to do. Phase 2 is 40 million, and we'll be working on that until 2028 in terms of climate change adaptations on agriculture lands. Lastly, I got 2 slides, I'll hustle. Alice, Carrot River Watershed. We've got Alice running there. You're going to hear about Alice, I think, after the break today. Ecological Goods and Service Program, helping farmers and ranchers build natural-based solutions on their land. And primarily in the Carrot, we're just transferring, actually, Wascana Upper Capella is going to come under SAW, and it's for restoring wetlands, regenerative ag, shelter belts, field to water edge projects within the Carrot River watershed. Okay, last slide. So the thought of climate change adaptation continues to be a struggle. We found it in our workshops. It's a hard sell because our climate is so variable. It's -50 one day and +20 the next day type of thing. I mean, that's a bit extreme example, but it's a hard sell for Canadians. We found that all the way through. I think this morning we heard the climate change word. It's a trigger. We have moved away from even using those words, climate change. We've went to climate adaptation, climate variability, climate extreme. And the other piece is we don't come science hard into those communities with the climate change stuff. We let those producers or communities tell their story and listen first, and then produce the science behind it. Because we found that if we don't do that, then they just back off from you, right? So this way, if they're telling their story and you're like, okay, well, just a minute, that's climate extreme. Well, I saw this then or that. Then all of a sudden they're like, okay, I believe in variability. I believe in extremes. So it changes that whole dynamic. And then engagement. Oh, sorry, I want to talk about the partnership piece. You can't do it alone. You have to have partners and collaboration to do it. And I'll tell you what, I'm a type A personality, if you haven't noticed, and this is the hardest thing to learn because you have to be able to listen, you have to be able to collaborate, you can't do it all yourself. So if we don't work together, we will not be able to accomplish much. And relationships just isn't with the communities. It's also, or the funders and the academics. It's one thing to work with the community. It's another thing to actually ensure what you say you're going to do, you do. So if you get funding and you say you're going to do this, you need to do it because it builds the trust between the funder and yourself, allows you to build more. And then lastly, you have to have good staff. We could not do all these things without our staff. So they're not, I only have one staff here today, but maybe they'll see this later. But I always want to thank them for their hard work because we can't do those things without them.
Okay, so for our third speaker, we have Genevieve Russell, who works as a sustainability specialist for the City of Saskatoon. She is responsible for the implementation of Saskatoon's water conservation strategy to reduce overall indoor and outdoor water use at the city and in the community. At the city, she also has worked on green infrastructure, triple bottom line decision-making, and urban design. Genevieve is a landscape architect with 25 years of experience. Working at the city provides her with the opportunity to serve the community and help her prepare to be more resilient to the challenges ahead. Today, she'll be speaking about the enhancing resilient municipal infrastructure and services in the City of Saskatoon and preparing the community for climate challenges. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to present on advancing water conservation and preparing for climate change in Saskatoon. My name is Genevieve Russell. I'm a landscape architect and I've worked for the city for nearly 20 years in various roles and departments. And as Jessica said, I'm currently a sustainability specialist leading the city's work on water conservation, both civic water conservation and in the community, and I'm happy to be here today. So the water conservation strategy was developed to identify actions to help households, businesses, and the city moderate their water use, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, increase water service resilience, and prepare for changing climate, and help manage water demand to ease the strain on the city's water system. So when I talk about resilience of the water system, it's in the context of climate change and refers to reducing water use, optimizing efficiency, engaging community so they're more likely to participate in conservation and accept the changes we're making at the city, monitoring and analyzing systems, and system recovery from an upset condition. So the water conservation targets were set in the low emissions community plan in 2019 because a quarter of the city's emissions comes from pumping and treating water. Water is very energy intensive. The targets are a 5% reduction in absolute water demand by 2026 and a 20% outdoor and 30% indoor water use reduction by 2050. My work also connects with a number of other city sustainability strategies. The Local Actions Adaptation Strategy, which was also completed in 2019 for civic infrastructure and services, identifies the likelihood and severity of climate change risks, and a community adaptation strategy is in progress. Some of the highest risks identified in local action are to the water delivery system due to heat and drought, increased heat stress on plants and trees, and reduction in plant health and survival. High risks have major to catastrophic consequences to service area functionality and significant staff and cost impacts. And the likelihood is almost certain to occur at least once a year. So protection from heat is starting to be recognized as a significant risk in the community. And I believe we will see recommendations to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of response to extreme heat events in the upcoming community adaptation strategy. The green infrastructure strategy describes Saskatoon's green network, which, as Jesse mentioned earlier today, accounts for 47% of the city's footprint and includes natural areas, parks, and green spaces. And these landscapes provide recreational, cultural, and ecological value and services. Not only are these spaces being utilized more than ever, and in some cases serving more residents than they were designed for, but the types of green spaces, amenities, and activities desired by our community are changing. So work is focused on rethinking these types of spaces to better respond to the risks, as well as reflect community priorities such as nature, conservation, climate resiliency, equity, and community stewardship. The city itself uses about 1.5 billion liters of water each year in its own facilities and operations, and 70 to 85% is outdoors during the summer. So most for irrigation and spray pads in parks. Over the past few years, we have been conducting pilot projects to measure water savings from efficiency improvements and build business cases for larger scale upgrades. So today I'm going to share how we're scaling up work to achieve full efficiency at spray pads. So some background, the pilot projects, which upgraded nozzles, were conducted in 2023 and 24. The goals of the project were to achieve reductions in water use while maintaining user experience, improving park infrastructure, and supporting the community during extreme heat. There are 23 spray pads and 30 paddling pools in Saskatoon, so essentially we have one in each neighborhood. And not only are spray pads a favorite recreation amenity, but they recently became part of the city's extreme heat emergency response plan, which includes extending spray pad hours during heat events to help the community cool off. In 2024, the city enacted its extreme heat emergency response plan 4 times, with spray pad hours extended for a total of 19 days, including extending the operating season into September and increasing water use by over 4.6 million liters. In 2023, we calculated results for 2 sites that showed that low flow nozzles reduce water use by 24%, saving 6.4 million liters of water, $24,000, and 2.7 tons of emissions, with no noticeable change to experience. The cost of the nozzles was just over $1,000, plus labor from our plumbing staff to install. In 2024, we calculated 41% savings at 3 sites, saving almost 18 million liters of water, $52,000, and 2.7 tons of emissions, using even more efficient nozzles. So this work set the foundation for water efficiency changes at all spray pads, with the addition of climate adaptation features to help the community stay cool during extreme heat. And we've started that project this year. Phase 1 is primarily focused on water conservation, replacing existing nozzles with low flow nozzles, and adding remote controls to modify the sequencing patterns and remotely adjust schedules at all 23 spray pads. And then phase 2 is primarily focused on adaptation to extreme heat events via public cooling. So we're adding shade structures, misting stations, and water fountains at 6 spray pad or paddling pool locations. And outside of the scope, we're also trying to coordinate tree planting at these sites with the Parks Department for additional shade and ecological benefit. We received a $1.65 million green loan in September to implement full-scale upgrades for the spray pad project. And green loans are use internal borrowing. So basically, we're borrowing from ourselves to fund work that has a return on investment from utility bill savings. We're following best energy management practices to bundle initiatives with short payback periods and significant savings with other desired initiatives with longer payback periods to gain the most benefits within a reasonable time frame. So the spray pad project is a good example of this. We're bundling the nozzle upgrades, which have a quick payback with the adaptation features to achieve the most benefit within a 10-year payback period. And then once repaid, operating savings from the green loan will then go into the sustainability reserve to fund even more sustainability projects. This is a fairly new policy. There's a base funding of $250,000 per year for the sustainability reserve, and the new policy is meant to increase annual funding as we implement efficiency projects. So the spray pad improvement project will be the first project approved to contribute to the reserve in this way, contributing $200,000 per year, starting in about 7 years. And this is a shortened payback period because our application to FCM's climate adaptation grant was successful, and we have now been approved for a grant of up to $700,000, which will help us pay back that loan faster. And this includes an additional $100,000 because we met the incentive criteria to meaningfully address equity in the work. So this slide shows the locations of spray pads and paddling pools across the city. The circles with the light shading are 7 sites that have been shortlisted for the adaptation features. Sites for these features are being selected using a need-based equity lens matrix, weighing factors like the neighborhood's current access and proximity to outdoor drinking water fountains and median dwelling age of homes in neighborhoods as an indicator of whether homes are more or less likely to have good insulation and air conditioning to manage the heat. This map is from the David Suzuki Foundation and Habitat online platform, highlighting the benefits and risks of Saskatoon's green network. And it shows a comparison of median income to tree canopy by neighborhood. So the neighborhood's income below tax measure is an indicator of increased reliance on walking and transit to move around. So neighborhoods with lower incomes and low canopy cover were prioritized for cooling amenities. And this map, also from the Suzuki and Habitat platform, shows the urban heat island effect. And so we included a neighborhood's green infrastructure and canopy cover in our site selection as well, looking for neighborhoods with the greatest need for relief from heat. So now that we have our shortlisted sites, we're reviewing the sites and plumbing conditions of the parks to make sure we can install these amenities in them. And that will lead us to our final selection of 6 sites. And we expect to complete construction by 2027. So this concludes my presentation, and thank you very much.
We have a couple minutes, so we have time for a question. Yes.
Hi, Ines Sanchez from Saskatoon Climate Hub. Thank you for your presentation and thank you for including citizens. I think everyone is aware that climate adaptation and mitigation couldn't be possible without citizens. My question for you is, what is the risk of water security for Saskatoon under climate change? Thank you.
We operate a water utility, and they're the ones that really manage that risk. So the water conservation strategy is really focused on the risks to the water system itself. The supply is another department's the area of expertise, but the one of the big challenges is that water use doubles in the summer here. So that's where we see a lot of strain on our water system. Water availability might go down because we can't keep up with producing the water that the community needs. So really, a lot of the work is focused on, in the strategy, is focused on that outdoor water use to reduce the peak demand and ensure that everybody has access to the water they need.
Okay, so last but certainly not least, we have our last speaker, Ryan Johnson. And Ryan has been working in the public works sector for 30 years in various engineering, planning, and management roles. In 2013, Ryan joined the Buffalo Pound Water Administration Board as general manager and led the transition into the nonprofit Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Corporation in 2016 as the president and CEO, the role that he currently holds. Corporation is responsible for the water supply for over 270,000 people in southern Saskatchewan. Ryan currently serves as president on the Canadian Water and Wastewater Association Board and also serves as member on the American Water Works Board. Ryan is married with 2 children and enjoys German sports cars and collecting Star Wars memorabilia. Please join me in welcoming Ryan to the stage to provide us an overview of how the Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Plan Renewal project is reducing its overall impact on the environment.
Thank you. Good there. Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. I want to cover the plant renewal projects, building sustainable, resilient, and water efficient infrastructure. But I think first we need to talk about some background. So let's see if I get this thing. Perfect. Okay. So for those that aren't aware, our water comes from Saskatchewan River. Before that through Calgary, goes to Lake Diefenbaker. And our lake was created, so the dam structure was built in the 1930s as a make-work project. Before that, really, it wasn't a lake. So it is about 30 kilometers long, kilometer wide, 3 meters deep. So it's really a big slough is our main source of water for a good chunk of Saskatchewan, south central Saskatchewan. So the water treatment plant was needed. So the cities tried to build a plant back in pre-World War I. They tried to get together post-World War I. It wasn't until after World War II that the 2 cities could come to terms and create the plant. So the cities Regina and Moose Jaw, through help with the provincial government and the federal government, basically created the plant. So we were constructed in 1951, commissioned in 1955. So we're located about 20 kilometers northeast of Moose Jaw and about 60 kilometers west by northwest of Regina. We've been in operation for 70 years now, and we sell potable water to the 2 cities, Sask Water and the provincial park. From that, they sell water through their own water co-ops to a fairly large area. So if we were located in Toronto, we'd be selling water well into the Buffalo region in the US. What else can I say? 270,000 people, we are our customers. We can produce 205 million liters per day. And our last major renovation was in 1989. So we were created as a nonprofit corporation in 2016. It was primarily to help us address the plant renewal project. And we have 2 owners that have 2 different ideas of risk and how to do things. It was much easier for us to become independent so that we could actually proceed with the project with do what was best and what was needed. So our board of directors is a independent skills-based board, and it is definitely a standard that I think a lot of other water, especially regional water utilities, have been starting to utilize. So we created our first environmental strategy in 2021. This strategy does align to our strategic plan and is used as part of our decision-making tools. Our strategy currently has 6 goals. They are first using renewable power, increase energy independence and decarbonizing our emergency backup systems, develop resource-conscious maintenance and operating programs and procedures, minimize water content of our sludge and solids disposed at the landfills, be recognized as a leader in low carbon emissions and wastewater discharges, and encourage public education and sustainable water management. Our strategy is currently being updated. It's done on a 4-year cycle to ensure that's still relevant. Okay. The plant renewal project itself had many objectives, and the most primary objectives were we need to meet regulatory requirements to produce safe drinking water. We need to mitigate risks that were identified in a risk registry. We had to ensure the sustainability of the water treatment plant into the future. We needed to provide resiliency to climate change and be more environmentally sustainable, operate more efficiently, and meet the growth demands in the region to the year 2050. So some factoids, we had a long list of issues and problems when I got there. They were engineering studies done on some, things were just talking to operators, things weren't working. And we started questioning whether or not the plant was going to survive the next 10 years. So we started trying to put together the list of issues and concerns we had with the plant itself. From that, we weren't really sure, is it better to build a brand new plant or renovate the existing plant? So that was kind of a fundamental question we had to address. So we started with a business case and gap analysis in 2017. We looked at 17 design concepts and various procurement models, which would be put into a multi-objective decision analysis tool to help sort of focus our decisions. And we found that the progressive design build model was the best procurement model for us. The plant's current location, operational philosophy was still good, but it wasn't very clear, should we build a new plant or should we do a major renovation? As a result, we wanted to allow innovation in the design process to decide whether it was better to build new or to renovate. So we developed an output standard that had to be, the design teams had to be able to meet. And that's basically what we went out to the market with and let the innovation decide the solution. We went to the market. We had 4 contract engineering design teams that were interested. 3 were shortlisted in 2019, and we started the pre-design phase. 2 submissions were received at the end of that process, and the Graham-Acon joint venture team was awarded the detailed design in 2020. In fact, just after COVID was, lockdowns were starting to occur. At the 100% design phase, we awarded the project to the Graham-Acon joint venture team, and they start construction in 2022. The project itself is about $325 million, and that's including all costs. The project is currently about 6 months behind schedule and should be completed in June of next year. To ensure that they meet the design requirements, we have a 2-year process validation period, which comes at the end. So the project will be completed in June of 2028 when we can assure that it meets the design criteria. And last thing is our capacity will be increased to allow for growth in the region to about 220 million liters per day with redundancy or 250 million liters per day without. So the process itself, for those that are curious, the lake's located 3 kilometers north of the plant. We bring the water in. We have 2 intakes. We have a fish screen, keep fish debris out. Then we run it down cascade to balance our the saturation of the water. Our process works best at 100% saturation, not at 80 or 120%. We add our coagulant. We have rapid mix filtrations process. Flocculation goes through dissolved air flotation system. Then we add ozone, then we quench the ozone. Then we lift the water. We used to use Archimedes screw pumps for those that have been to the plant before. We no longer have those, but we change our filters out to biologically activated contactors. We run it through UV because our lake is full of Cryptosporidium and Giardia. And then we run it through clear well, add our chlorine, and then basically off to the cities. The next picture here, I'll go quickly. This was the design team's rendering of what the plant should look like when it was completed back in 2020. This is what it looks like last summer. Only things I want to point out here is this is our solar system. We'll talk about in a few seconds. The lake is up here about 3 kilometers north of the plant, but this was the plant under construction with a lot of the processed sludge lagoons you can see. So with that said, what we wanted to do to reduce our environmental impact is we did do a resiliency study at the beginning of the project it was a requirement for grant funding to at least do the study, but we actually wanted to incorporate a lot of the elements. So most of the things that have been completed is new treatment plant processes are able to treat a wider range of raw water conditions. Climate change was actually impacting our plant. In 2015, I had a very difficult conversation with 2 mayors and 2 city managers, explaining to them that we were about 6 hours from depressurizing and how would you like to run out of water. Our old processes were designed based on raw water conditions that were different than what we have today. And temperature impacted our treatment processes before. And because our lake is only 3 meters deep, we were having almost 30-degree days, almost freezing temperatures at night, and we had 2 weeks of no wind. So the lake was very stratified. So we had hot water on the top, cold water on the bottom. When we were bringing that water into the plant, it actually prevented our settling clarifiers to settle. Everything was floating to the top, preventing us from treating water. So this was definitely an alarming situation. So also 100% of electrical power is green. So we do have 2 megawatts of on-site generation with solar. That should do 10-15% of our power. The rest of it, we were part of SaskPower's renewable subscription service program. So we use that. So all our power is green. We did build our administration building to LEED certified standards. We should be able to get LEED silver, and we are going to push for that when the project's done. The plant process area itself was built in vision standards to again help minimize the environmental impact of the operations. The plant service water is used for cooling the administration building, and our treated water is ideal for, some of our processed water is ideal for heat transfer. And we purchased an EV truck. So those are the things that we have done. What we will be doing is to enhance the resiliency for climate change. We will be recycling 10% of our processed water, which will reduce energy input. We'll be reducing our water losses from currently 12% down to 3%, which again reduces energy and chemical costs. The new plant will operate at steady state for production, which is far more efficient than it currently runs at the moment. We are looking at a second phase where we're looking at either adding some kind of geothermal heating cooling system, expansion of the solar, and possibly adding a wind turbine. Our process waste discharge management will improve the plant's impact on the environment by reducing the sludge that we produce, which reduces what we have to take to a landfill, and as well as meeting regulatory requirements. Our sludge, we're looking at doing some form of SRAM site, which is a value add to our waste product. And what we're seeing so far with research is very promising. And we'll have pH lead control for better protection of customers. Our treatment processes will reduce trihalomethanes, which in the old system would not. And we do collect and share data. But overall, with the plant renewal project, we took the opportunity to do our best to build in sustainable practices, increase the resiliency to climate change, and operate the water plant as efficiently as possible. And we do offer tours for anyone who's interested. Just contact the plant. We'll make arrangements. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. We have about 2 minutes, so we can take a question or two, depending how quickly we chat.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. You mentioned there was a resiliency study done in the early stages. Just curious about how that impacted the overall design in terms of climate impacts.
Yeah, great question. So what happened is we took the information from the study and we gave it to the design build team so that they can incorporate it into the design. And what we're looking for is, again, the City of Regina, being one of my owners, has a Climate 2050 plan that they were trying to go to. Being one of our owners, we've adopted a lot of the elements of that. So it all kind of lined up to do it. So we really gave it to our design engineer teams to ensure they put those into the project. And for the most part, I think we've covered most of the things we wanted to cover.
Thank you.
Okay, and we'll get a Mentimeter question in this time. So, let's go with the middle. To what extent has being independent of the cities improved the plant's ability to improve the plant's overall functioning?
Thank you. So
when you have two different owners, they have two different ideas of risk and how they would do things. It made it very difficult for making decisions. So we had gone through that process from the 1950s right up until it became incorporated. So it just allowed the board of directors to make decisions. It's a skills-based board, so the board members are selected to have the right skill sets that are complementary. So if we want a legal person on the board, we have a legal, we have a couple of engineers, people in the private sector, public sector. So we have a good mix of people with different backgrounds, which are actually a compensated board too. So they're paid, but they're there to make the best decisions for the entity that don't have any ties to either of the cities. So we can make the best decisions based on the information at hand.
Amazing. I have a surprise addition to our program. It's not on the program, but we're going to be watching a short video together. And our friends at Strategic Systems Engineering, in their work with the Water Resilience Master Plan with Sandy Bay First Nation, developed a film that describes the process, logic, and skills that their company uses to build community-driven, high-value resilience project. And so right after the video, we'll be able to move into a break and we'll come back together at 3. So enjoy the video from our friends at Strategic Systems Engineering and enjoy your break. We'll see you here back at.
For the last.
Nice. The way that the infrastructure is in the community is kind of haphazard, ad hoc. Roads were just put anywhere and they didn't do any hydrological surveys. Brings us to the point where we are today, where we have too much water or not enough water.
They have a lot of impacts, particularly around flooding and drainage that come in from outside the community.
It's detrimental to the community and it's detrimental to their infrastructure.
If you're in a low-lying area, the water infiltrates your house, causing a moisture problem in your house, which causes mold.
We hope to alleviate the effects of flooding in Sandy Bay.
I want to make things a little bit better for the community.
We went out and we saw the major drainage routes and what was causing overland flooding. There's a culvert in here. Should it be deeper and should we clean out this drainage pathway?
Yeah, I think it takes about 6 hours and then the road is impassable. Like once we get 6 hours of rain, we've gotten some of the community members to come and meet and give them a chance to let us know what's happening out there.
Nobody knows their area more than the people that live there.
So the first step was understanding how water wants to move in the area. And we did that with high resolution mapping. So it's just going to show you a piece of software that we're developing. It's intended to help your community analyze things like flood risk and plan things. Here we're visualizing the damage from overland flooding as a dollar value. We can estimate the economic cost of flooding on buildings and roads.
The big thing we're taking away from this is that we can adapt, right, to climate and become resilient to its effects.
And so you can see it's relatively simple technology. We install a culvert, we install a gated culvert, we build a berm like this, and all of a sudden you've reduced flood risk and you're holding water for where you need it.
Yes, I like the idea of the water storage. I think that would be really, really helpful for people of Sandy Bay.
Through the project, we're realizing that there's a lot of uses for the water, using it for the benefit of our community, for maybe community gardens. We want to do some irrigation in the future. This project is very, very special because it really does respect the water.
They can also improve water quality because some of the vegetation that grows in and around these structures can actually be harvested in the fall when water levels are low. And that improves water quality because it removes the nutrients.
What I would like to see the most in our community is for us to continue to be resilient, self-sufficient, be able to provide the needs of our community here locally. I would suggest to the rest of the community is to be involved as much as possible and to realize the importance of what this project is and what we're trying to accomplish. This is probably one of the most worthwhile things to be doing.
I don't know how much time it'll take, but the community will eventually get over these hurdles.
I'm always thinking about the younger generation. If we don't take care of Mother Earth, what are we gonna leave them? There has to be something that we can do now so that they have a better future.